Hi everyone, delonewolf here, and welcome back for another EVE Online video. Welcome back also to GTA 4.4, the largest trade hub in EVE Online, because in today's video I want to take a look at the market response for this new Dawn update, this patch that has finally hit the live server that brought a lot of changes to mining ships, to the ores out there. So I want to take a look at the minerals and at the mining ships and see how the market reacted to that bombshell, that massive amount of changes. That patch notes were absolutely huge. So we will take a look at that. For me personally, my plans are still the same. I am planning to bring my Orcas up to speed and get the most best possible yield out of them. That does require that I get like a Tech 2 core. So that is going to be, I think, a little bit of time, or take a little bit of time before I can buy that for a reasonable price. But next to that, I'm also looking for potential solo mining ships. And from the comments and chat channels and things like that that I've been following, I think the Retriever and the Mackinac are the two ships that people have pinpointed as being the right balance between yield and potential tank for solo players. So that's probably what I'll be slowly working my way on when it comes to EVE Online. But let's dive in, let's take a look at the market, and let's start with the minerals to see what's happening here. As we generally do in EVE Talk, we'll take a look at the tritanium first, which is the cheapest mineral and the most bulky mineral as well. And we can definitely see that that one has been going up in the last month or so, and we're well above the 4.5 ISK, so this is clearly a trend break from October. Volume-wise, I don't spot anything too special, but in GTA itself, we're talking 4.70 ISK for the sellers and 447 for the buyers. To me, this makes a little bit of sense. Honestly, newer players are probably the ones that will not gain a lot of potential mining power from all of this, although the availability of tritanium should in theory have doubled. I think overall the impact here will be perhaps a little bit of a slowing down as people need to readjust. And thus the uptick here in the tritanium price, in my opinion, makes sense, and it's pretty much at the high point since the industry changes back in April. Next up, we've got the pyrite market, and that is a very interesting, different response. Over the last couple of weeks, I'd seen that upwards pressure building here as well. We went back to that 17.5 ISK, and if we could have broken that on the upside, it would have been very good news. But we're not noticing a big volume change or anything like that, and yet the daily average prices are clearly taking a nosedive in the last couple of days. We're now talking 1688 for the sellers and 1649 for the buyers. I think perhaps some sellers came out of the woodwork, or there is just this potential higher yield that is transferring itself or translating itself already to a market reaction in pyrite. So right now for HiSec, honestly, we're up in the air. Tritanium is saying we can expect higher prices, and pyrite is saying expect lower prices. Let's see if Mexalon can then make the difference, and unfortunately it can't. It's right in the middle, basically stuck at a price that did jump up in November, but I don't think that we can really make this or correlate this to the patch or anything like that. And so Mexalon is going now for 65 ISK for the sellers and 62 for the buyers. Still, historically speaking, a pretty low price, but definitely a little bit of a recovery since the summer, where Mexalon went down, I think, below 60 ISK on a couple of days. Yeah, 57 here, for instance. So it's interesting. I definitely thought we would see a more uniform move, that the market would decide on what would happen. But my first impression here is that the market doesn't know either. And yeah, that was my feeling as well, though. When I read the change that CCP announced, I said this could end up being a wash. While they do have the doubling of the capabilities, just the Rorcal nerf itself is going to, either mean a drastically increased amount of time that's necessary to bring all of those resources into the game, or you'll need to really switch it up and find the best possible way to mine, which is going to take a little bit of time. So over here, hesitation is my read on it. Next up, we've got Isogen. This is definitely a pretty interesting chart as well. If you've been following ETH Talk, what in my opinion has been happening here is that for like the last half year or so, we've slowly been chewing through old reserves of Isogen, and whenever we would break through like a pretty big number, we would jump up in price a little bit, and then lately actually breaking through 75, going above 100 and actually reaching 125 a little bit over a week ago. So I think that this trend will actually continue, but in the last couple of days what we are seeing is a reduction in the price on a couple of volumes that are coming in. So let's take a look if we can notice what's happening here. Sellers coming in at 113, that's actually still reasonable. It's not 125 anymore, but it's still well above 100 disk. And the first buyer is now coming in at 108 as well. What we should notice is, of course, these volumes. There's still 50 million is coming in less than 24 hours ago at 114, another 50 million here at 113.50, another 20 million at 113.30. So I think that this is still what's happening. There are players out there that still hold big stocks of Isogen, and those find their way to the market once we reach certain thresholds, but also in all likeliness because of the patch, once mining and resources come back to the forefront of players. There may even be some players that have returned to take a look at the patch, seen that they have a lot of Isogen. You look at this chart and that looks like the right time to dump it and to try to sell it for a better price, let's say above 100 disk. I personally think that we are not done yet with the actual increase in the price or the value of Isogen, because if we look at what we should expect for active amounts that can easily be brought to the market, that should be way lower than the tens of millions that we're seeing here in several orders, because it has to come from LowSec at this point. So I think that Isogen still has quite a bit of upwards potential, and we should eventually find a chart that looks a lot more like Noxium, and to me this does make a lot of sense. As we see here, Noxium has been making its way back up as well in the last 10 days or so, and at the moment on big volumes actually became quite expensive, and sort of confirmed that, yeah, we're not going to pay 1,000 disk for Noxium, we are going to pay 1,100 disk for Noxium, and buyers are forced up into the 1,050 range as well. Why does this make sense to me? Well, there are in all likeliness at least some big organized groups that were able to field roar calls in LowSec as well, and with that nerf, that is going to mean less Noxium or potentially less Noxium coming to the market. And so this increased price to me makes a lot of sense, because those most organized groups, they have to really adapt to the changes with the new Dawn patch. And then we go to nullsec, which sort of, saw this coming, you could say, because what is this, 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, we jumped for Zydrine from a price range of 840 ISK all the way up to 1,000 ISK for the sellers, 940 now for the buyers. And this was actually a market response on the announcements from CCP, and they just said, yeah, this is the Rorcal, that one is getting nerfed. A lot of mining is done by big Rorcal fleets. They'll now have to organize, use hulks, use other options. And in general, we're actually expecting that it will take more time to really mine as much in nullsec as what we did before, even though the amount of potential resources again has doubled with the patch. The amount of effort needed to bring all of that to the market in nullsec is in all likeliness going up, and so we got this 15% premium to pay all of a sudden for Zydrine. And then Megasite is actually doing something a little bit different, like hesitating. A slight upward trend is seen here on that 20-day moving average, but players have mentioned that quite often before in ETH Talk as well. Megasite is a little bit different, although a lot of it comes from nullsec. There's also sources found in Triglavian space, and so we basically expect that we're not seeing too much Rorcal mining happening, let's say in deep LowSec or in Trig space, wherever it is that we get those extra resources from. And as a result, here the impact is not as noticeable as Zydrine. Must also be noted that historically historically speaking, Megasite was always more expensive than Zydrine, and now we're selling this for 578, whereas Zydrine is 1000 disc a pop. So that's also definitely a very big difference. And then another one here is Morphite, a little bit different because it is tied to the Tech 2 economy, and this to me is another really interesting one, not expected. I thought we'd move like sideways. I'm reading a lot of hesitation in the market as to exactly what's going to happen, but clearly we are going down in price here. 60,000 now for the sellers, 52,800 for the buyers. That's a pretty wide margin that has opened up here. If I had to speculate on how the market is thinking for Morphite, is that double availability and what will get rushed by any group that has access to potential Morphite. It is going to be Morphite, of course. They'll mine this before Zydrine, before any of the other resources. And so here the increased availability should mean more Morphite on the market and thus lower prices. So the impact on the mineral market, from what I can tell, is definitely mixed. The market doesn't exactly know what's going to happen in general, and basically depending on the mineral we have very, very different responses. With Zydrine that shot up and basically confirms this. Noxium is making its way up right now. Tritanium went up as well and is kind of confirming that, but then Pyrite's going down, Morphite's going down, Mexalon doesn't know what to do, and Isogen is going down quite substantially as well. Not exactly what I expected, but this seems to be how the market is reading the current patch. Then next, let's take a look at some potential winners, because of course we have the mining barges that are now described as being the kings of mining. So if you want yield, you no longer want a Rorcal, you no longer want an Orca. You want a mining barge, or preferably, of course, an exhumer that is a Tech 2. So let's take a look at this. Here is the Covetor. Very interesting volume change, right? This does mean that I think a lot of players in corporations will start to organize fleets with boosting Orcas, but then also Covetors and other mining ships in the mix in order to get more out of the available resources. But the impact on the price seems to be quite limited. They're still selling for 38 million. 34 million for the buyers. That's quite reasonable for this type of a massive increase in volume. The Procurer, pretty much the same. In fact, its volume is not that outlandish. And let's see if we broke 40 million on the sellers. Not even that, still just below that for the sellers, and 36 million for the buyers. And then finally, the Retriever, which I think has been described as potentially your solo option, because it has that right balance. Clearly, we're seeing the volumes as well, but the price response is not crazy. 38 million for the sellers, 34 for the buyers. Tech 1 seems to basically have so much supply, so much availability when it comes to these mining barges that the price really hasn't done anything all too special. Moving on to the exhumers, then I'll start with the Skiff, potentially lowest yield. I think that one took a little bit of a beating as well on its potential tank and its agility. And here we can see we have an increased volume, but the price response again is quite okay. 250 million, kind of expensive though, of course, for a single ship, and 223 million for the buyers. But we've seen high points above 280 before, so this is not completely crazy. Then we do finally have a winner. Here's the Mackinac, biggest volume response so far. Started before the patch on a downtrend and at around 230 million ISK, is now selling for around 350, 400 million because of a lack of availability. So this is clearly one of the winners that all of a sudden has become very expensive. And yes, if you want that, what's described as your best solo option, which is a Mackinac, you're going to pay the price at the moment. And then of course we've got the Hulk, that's also gone up in price quite substantially. I think here it's a different crowd, it's more of the organized group crowd, because if you want potential best yield, then you want to field some Hulks. And so these have gone up in volume massively as well. And the price response is 330 million. That's actually reasonable in the sense that it's basically the 1 year high point that's reached here again. So the Hulk to me feels like, yeah, that's still reasonable. You're not likely to get a lot of Hulks below 300 million anytime soon, although the buyers are still trying at 280 million as well. So that's the price response here for the mining barges. We'll take a quick look at the Orca as well. Should expect that one to maybe go down or maybe not. Yeah, definitely going down in the last couple of days in sell prices, just below 1.6 billion at this point, 1.5 billion for the buyers. As I've said, I am going to experiment with this one, but then I will look into eventually maybe having a Mackinac as an option in all my bases of operations as well, if the difference is basically big enough that we should do that. And then I also wanted to take a quick look at the industrial cores, because of course what I'm hoping to eventually get is a large industrial core 2 for the Orca. Availability is still next to nothing, and the Tech 1 is already down to 75 million ISK. So if you absolutely want to get out there with your Orca right now in a mining belt and you want to do a little bit of mining with the drones, you can get a Tech 1 large industrial core at a reasonable price, and that one gives you a, let's see here, ore mining yield bonus of 25% compared to the 75% of a Tech 2 module. Honestly, I'm gonna just wait for the Tech 2 one to become available before I go out there and mine in the Orca at this point. Yeah, the markets, all right. I honestly think that it's sort of following my read on this as well. We don't really know what the net result of these changes are going to be, and they may actually be quite small in general. Is that good? Is that bad? Really depends on your own personal viewpoint. But this is my look at the market after the New Dawn patch. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and as always, I'll see you next time.